Come home hurt.
What'd you tweak? An ankle?
A knee.
I went to my regular.
Right-handed guy hit a ball out the right field.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I got the image on it. It up, hit the ground and went smack right into my knee.
Wow.
And it was the last innings, so, but it's been hurting ever since. We soaked it.
Iced it, yeah.
Yeah,
The name of it is.
it doesn't feel better by morning, and we'll have somebody to look at it. That's the fun things in life.
Yeah.
Chris, did you hear me tell what happened to me the other day?
Some guy beat on your door and said there was some cows loose.
It's so funny. I just got out of the shower. There's this pounding, Linda, Linda, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
Some guy on a motorcycle with long gray hair apparently had seen the cows out and knew where I
Yeah.
lived and started pounding on the door.
They think you have treasure.
That little house that's in front of the ranch belongs to them, and sometimes I let the cows in there, but the way he was talking, he said, "Look out your front window, they're right there in the yard," and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
He gave me that.
They, that's one of the things about open range. If you want them to stay out of your yard, you have to fence your
right,
yards.
right. My sister told me that too, that either if you have no trespassing when I first came, or it's fenced, otherwise everybody's free to go in your yard.
Right. They, I had cows, my neighbor's cows got out and they were eating all my trees, you know, pulling all the low branches off. So I called up animal control and they said, no, it's free range. They can, if you want them out, you have to fence them.
Yeah, but these sometimes, at night when there's no light, black cows get out on the road, then they will come.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I've had to call the police before on that.
We had, in the community I lived in, they lost 2 high school girls that way. Came over a hill and there was a black cow in the road and that was that.
Yeah, you hit that and it's over.
Usually what's causing it is some sort of bone spur or growth that's pressing the bone,
My gum.
and then they go and shave it down.
Part-time butcher. He was the chef at the, and I knew how to butcher meat out. And somebody came through and they took out 11 cats.
Wow.
And everybody that could cut meat was called that night.
Yeah,
Save what we can.
yeah, yeah. That's amazing.
I mean, I don't have no idea. I mean, that poor Buick was just beat to death.
Yeah, you're fortunate you don't get killed in a deal like that.
But they, you know, like they do, they break the fence down, they want people on the other side.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing.
I'll tell you what amazed me, where they're doing the construction on that bridge between here and Paulton. Them cows come right up the fence and watch these guys work.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't realize they were that nosy.
Yeah, they're curious and dumb.
Yeah, the little
Yeah.
girl, she developed a bone spur.
I worked for a couple of ranchers up in southern Colorado, and I don't have any glowing reports on the mental capacities of cows, but
Tiny, but they're dumb.
they taste good. That's about all I can say for them.
I laughed. My son and his wife, her grandfather has a ranch. And when he butchers every fall, he gives them fresh meat. Well, her brother, his wife can't handle fresh meat. Doesn't taste like what's at Safeway.
Oh man, that's sad.
Oh, so
That's
my
sad.
son gets their share each year because she won't eat it. She's giving it away to anybody and
darned.
everybody.
Wow, that's
I
pretty
said, you know
amazing.
what, girl? You need to change your taste buds.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
really.
find someplace other than
Want this one off? Oh, okay, cool. We're gonna go ahead and fire up if you girls are ready. Let's get this rocking.
we don't have nobody here yet, do we?
It's
Please.
look at this.
Where's the judge? Isn't he presenting tonight? There he is.
Yeah.
They're still talking.
I need to talk to him. I'll be
Oh, okay.
Either until
We got the judge and the police, and then I guess Jamie's gonna talk,
I'll tell you one thing,
Yeah.
you're not stout.
or
I can see where it could cause that because it is pretty affair.
maybe Joe will talk
Yeah.
for all the departments. Are you talking for the mayor and council? For our budget?
No.
Did I get a raise this year?
Yeah, do you get a raise? There you go. There you go.
So what we could do is
I can't shoot.
a couple 2x4 blocks over here
Under your chair, yeah, that's the biggest raise we're gonna get this year.
Well, hopefully we won't get any of these side effects.
All right.
One of the side effects of that
Good evening, Jen.
suicide. So that you
As
said
soon as Miss Hatch is settled in, let's go ahead and spark this up
Okay,
because
Lon's not coming tonight?
Lon's not coming tonight and Daryl's not coming tonight, so
He's ready to start.
let's go ahead and light this up.
It says 6 PM on Mickey.
And I know 2 hours goes by fast, but
We're not doing 2 hours.
I'm hoping not. All right. Are you ready, Jimmy?
Joe gonna be here? Oh, there you are.
He is.
Does anybody have a PowerPoint?
PowerPoint.
All righty.
Well, let's start this next pleasant 2 hours right now here. Good. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Miss Lewis, may we have the roll call?
Good evening. Whoops. Well, doesn't sound like my mic is on, but Councilmember McKee.
Here.
Councilmember Wojcik.
Here.
Councilmember Hatch.
Here.
Councilmember Best.
Here.
And Mayor Marley.
Here.
Doesn't sound like these are on.
They're on. You said they're on.
She said they were on. The folks at home can hear us,
But they're making
but
noise.
there's feedback in the overhead.
Well, she turned off that so we can't hear it. Or those.
We'll have to yell.
No, you
No.
Mr. Duffy, were you doing the introductions tonight?
I was going to do that, sir. if you
Great.
are ready to
Let's
start.
go.
Welcome to the second best meeting of the year after last night. Actually, we just have two of our department heads here tonight. The judge will start first, and then the chief has his budget. Jamie will talk about the town clerk's budget, and then we can just go over the last miscellaneous ones real quick after that. So it should be a
Excellent.
little bit lighter than last night. So,
Excellent.
With that, Judge, would you like to start the evening?
He's on page 75.
If the microphones are not on, I'm going to raise my voice a little bit, and that's not raising it at you. It's just so it can be heard. What Joe had asked me to address with you are some of the things that are in the budget insofar as the court special revenue fund, otherwise known as the court improvement fee. As you
Do
know,
we have a page, Joe?
75. Oh. Lindsay, you don't have this page again?
It's in here somewhere.
We had it from last night.
Okay, I know, but it's.
Okay, are we all on page 75 through 77? Okay, yes, sir. If you would, Judge, remember the folks at home can hear us, but we do need to project a little bit while we're in here. Thank you.
so long as you don't think I'm yelling at you, Mayor, I'll be glad to do that.
We're good, thank you.
You may know, but there's a $27 court improvement fee that is added on to every case that comes through the court, whether it's a criminal case or whether it's a traffic case or a criminal traffic violation and so forth. And that fund, of course, was created in about 2006, if I recall. And it is for the specific purpose of improving the court, and it lays out exactly what things it can be spent for. So some of the things that I intend to do this coming budget year, one of them is to get a new flagpole. The flagpole that the court has is a piece of drilling pipe. And the problem with that is it does not hold paint very well. And the library is likewise looking at getting another flagpole or getting a flagpole. I can tell you that in terms of the research that we've done, if you have seen the flagpole at the fire station, Century Avenue, the Chino Fire District, that's a beautiful flagpole. It's too big for us. They do make one that is smaller and is of the same style. And so my intent is that both with the court's flagpole and the libraries, that they be similar so that they would all be consistent. And we're getting bids on that right now, but we're waiting a bit with the library. Another thing, it sounds trivial, but it's really not, and that is that the carpet in the courtroom is the original carpet. The difficulty is that I have had people in court who are bleeding, and heavens knows what else is going on back in the gallery, if you will, and there is a very severe hazmat issue with all of that. And so we need to get a carpet or a covering that would allow for removal in hazmat type activities. You can ask the chief what it costs when they have a prisoner, if you will, or somebody in custody in the back of the police car and they're bleeding, and that's at least $1,000 a pop, if not a bit more. So, and that would also solve the problem that I have with the electrical being in absolute center of the courtroom, and you can duct tape that all you want, but we really need to do something a bit more substantial to get that taken care of. And this also sounds minor, but it's not. The glass top table for the jury room, which was purchased back in the 90s, I suppose is nice, but it really is not appropriate for a jury because you can see right to the tabletop, right at everybody, and it lacks the privacy, if you will, that I think a jury is entitled to in their deliberations. I've talked with Spencer. He has a mechanism whereby furniture and things of that sort can go to an auction, and then the town receives back the money for it or swap it. He knows about that, and that's something that I'm going to do to get a more appropriate table, if you will. So last, which is really first, is a security system. And I will let you know that at the end of June at the judicial conference, which is going to be in Tucson this year, there is a specific section on security, in particular, I believe, in lower courts. Obviously, I've signed up for that. I want to see what other ideas I get, but we need to have a security system, and I don't care if people know we have it. And maybe if they know we have it and they're being videoed, maybe they'll behave a bit better. But the other part of that is to add recording to it so that, not for the proceedings, we have recording for that, but should there be an incident, then having the audio would be good. The second thing is that were I to have another, I've had several disorderly people. I've had to call an officer to come in. But if that situation arises again, and again, Chuck and the troops are in the back looking at the video to see where people are and where this individual is and so forth, they're being able to hear as well what is being said or what is being done. It would certainly be a benefit, I believe, in planning an operation or in planning how they were going to deal with it. So those are really the four main things insofar as this budget year. Security I want to do first, and then I will do the other things. And all of that does not come out of the town's budget. That comes out of the court's improvement fund or the special revenue fund.
Excellent. Are you entertaining questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Do we have any questions on this side?
No.
No? Yes, sir.
Maybe, I mean, I know there's always going to be crime, there's always going to be fines and what have you. How do you, when you estimate, you're estimating what it's cost you to run a court, right?
Beg your pardon?
When-
Estimate what it's going to cost?
Yeah, your estimated budget is what it's going to cost to run court. Whether you have 10 cases or 110 cases, it doesn't matter. It still costs that same amount of money to run the court, right?
Basically, yes.
Okay. I know where our money comes from sales tax. People are going to buy. But, I mean, your percentages and what have you, where your fines and penalties money goes, you know, it's kind of, well, maybe I don't have so many speeders this year. Maybe I don't have major crime this year because we're doing a good job of preventing that stuff. So I just kind of was wondering how you budgeted if things changed when you have more cases or less cases.
They're not going to change as far as the fixed operation cost, as in any budget. Personnel costs are fixed, whether it's 1 or 20. Certain other, you know, what we pay a little bit for water and for all those other different standard expenses. all of that is fixed regardless of the number of cases. I will tell you that I know from last year or the year before, I presented to the council the respective budgets of the other three municipalities that are closest in population to Chino, and that's Cottonwood, Sedona, and Camp Verde. Those three, all in the 10,000 range or whatnot. Chino's budget was the least of those. They have more staff. We're more efficient, so we don't need more staff. I don't know where I'd put them if we had them. But, so no, those are basic. In terms of revenue, what the town would get is not the 27, that would be for court improvement, but there also is a state ordered, if you will, $15 fee that is added, and a percentage of that goes to the police department, and it is specified, if I'm not mistaken, basically for officer safety or all of the things that would be in that area, Kevlar and whatever. But a portion of that goes to the police department. Would it increase the town's revenue if you had 10,000 more cases? Marginally, it would, but the town's already getting the percentage, if you will. Most of it, as you well know, goes to the state. If the traffic enforcement portion in the town code were used, then that revenue would be coming more toward the town. But that would be one area that I could think of.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
We talked about that in an attempt to bring it up, that some cities and towns are doing that. And at the time, you wanted to see, Mayor, how it was coming out in some of the other jurisdictions. And I don't know, Jerome was one of the leaders in that, I think, or Williams.
Williams
was
is
one of the
the main
leaders,
one that I
so
know of.
We may want to revisit that.
Revisit it, you bet.
Yeah, I don't know, you know, we may want to discuss it with our attorney, but at the time you felt that it was more important that we watch and see what happens, and we may want to go back to that.
You bet. We had a few other irons in the fire at that time, but hopefully we'll be able to make use of that. Thank you.
I don't think anybody is opposed to that, and I don't think police department's opposed to it either. It's just a matter of getting it put together. But there are at least a couple of statutes that I see pretty frequently that are also covered in the town code. And of course, that's not reported to Motor Vehicle Division. Consequently, the individual does not get points on their record because it's, quote, a local charge. So at any rate, I'll leave that there.
Okay, thank
Maybe
you.
the mayor and I can talk, who's on
You
that?
bet.
We probably should engage the
Public
safety
safety.
committee, but, you know, the magistrate committee, we talked about it before, but we can't have too many people because we'll go over the limit, but it may be something we need to look into again. I
You
mean,
bet.
Joe, the finance director was going to look into it before.
Okay, we can hopefully engage Mr. Duffy in that conversation and
Any other
revisit that.
questions?
Did
Thank
you
you, I'm
have any
satisfied.
questions? All right. Any other follow-ups? Okay, great. Thank you.
Your Gantt charts are a whole lot bigger than mine.
We got more wall space.
We have numerous fires burning that we have to
All
deal
right,
with.
thank you.
Thank you.
Council, I was just going to kind of go through some of the high points of the budget and start with the police department first. If you have any questions, just feel free to stop me at any time and ask. And then once we get through with the police, then we'll talk about animal control.
Okay.
Just want to touch on a couple of our accomplishments this year. We did add a second K-9 team. Some of you probably seen our truck riding around with that big Ruger logo on it. They funded that team, purchasing the dog and also the equipment for that vehicle, so there was no general funds used on that. And we also get some money through the another grant, so both of our K-9s this year were completely, all of our training and everything we did was funded through grants and donations.
Cool.
So that gives us two teams, and that allows us to put one on each side of the week, because the way their shifts work, if we only have one dog, we're only covering 3 to 4 days a week, and now we can cover 7 days a week. We're moving way ahead of schedule on the shooting range, the tactical range. We finished the second phase, which is getting the cover, the sidewalks, the fill between the sidewalks, the target line. All of that is now complete or very near completion. The important thing about that is we'll start being able to have more training and classes out there, and that benefits the department. We're able to put people in classes here locally, and that saves on travel and training costs for the department. And we're able to bring in some of the better quality training too. We've had one instructor come in that's an expert in school shootings a while back, and you might have seen that in the paper. And we were able to host that class here in Chino Valley, so that was really awesome, and we're going to plan to do more and more of that here. And the range will give us the ability to do that on firearms-related classes. We did reestablish our block watch this year. We've had our first meeting. One of my civilian officers is coordinating that, and we'll be getting that moving forward as the year progresses. We did get the food bank building. We've used all department labor. We haven't spent any money as far as labor goes to do anything with that. Basically, we've just cleaned it, painted it. We put shelving in it, starting to put shelving in it, and lockers. We fenced it off so it's secure. Our goal is probably in the next 30 to 45 days to be able to get rid of that ugly Connex box that's sitting between me and Public Works. We're paying $130 a month for that to store evidence from a homicide that we didn't have room for. So we'll be moving that into the old food bank building. We also have evidence over in that double wide next to the shop, and we're trying to work on getting our stuff out of there because the Friends of the Library need space, and also Spencer. And when Spencer's already got one room of it, and I think the Friends have a little bit of stuff over there, but as we get our evidence out and our gun stuff out, eventually we'll be able to vacate that entire trailer, and they'll be able to use that space over there.
Okay.
The biggest thing as far as for both this last year and this coming year in our budget was our policy manual dates back over 20 years. It was actually stolen from Prescott, who stole it, I believe, from Vegas or somewhere over there. You actually find things in there that don't even apply to us. They talk about a blood drying room or something. We have no such thing. We've worked and worked on trying to update it. In 2001, there was a lot of revisions made. The problem is that there's constantly, almost on a weekly basis, court decisions and things coming out that affect the way we do business. And it's difficult as a small department to monitor all that and make sure that we're in compliance with all those things. And the other issue is if we change something in one part of the policy manual, a lot of times that may affect 2 or 3 other sections. And if we miss those, then we end up with things that conflict. So we this year started contracting with a company called Lexipol. They have about 1,500 agencies throughout the United States they contract with, and about 30 here in Arizona. And it's an online system, and basically we've been working on filling out questionnaires about our department, how we do business. They've sent us back a draft. We're reviewing that in sections, and we kick it back and forth. And it's all color-coded, so we know if there's a policy in there, it's based on federal law, it's coded one way, state law another way, court case decisions another way. So we know, not to change things that are conflict with things in law.
Got it.
And they monitor constantly. So once our policy's in place, anytime a court decision comes out that might affect how we do business, they're going to let us know so that we can adapt the policy, and it will change everything in the policy that's affected, so we don't miss a section. The other big thing, which is a pet peeve of mine, is our policy manual also includes procedures, and those should really be separated out. The policy tells us what we can and can't do, and the procedures tell us how to do things. So one of our goals for next year is when we break those procedures out, with new technology, we'd like to put all that online, and then say you have a question about how to package evidence. You would go to that procedure, and we can actually implant videos and pictures and things in there showing how to do it instead of just having written. And that'll help the officers, because there's things that they may not run across, but once in a blue moon, say a dead body, they need to know how to fill that form out, but they haven't done one in 2 years. They'll be able to actually go in there, see the form, see how it's filled out. So that's one of our goals for next year, is to get that up and running. Other goals for next year, we want to move forward on the phase 3 of the range, which is getting our classroom up and running. I think I've got some money identified, which will give us enough to get the remodeling done on that and bring it into ADA compliance so we can use it. One of the things I'm working with Mr. Duffy on is the long-term asset replacement, which includes our vehicles, which I think they talked to you a little bit about last night. I just want to plug the shop. We get a lot more miles out of our vehicles than a lot of departments because of the excellent job they do on maintaining them. We would never be able to go to the mileages we are with a lot of places, but they have those cars and they're religiously checking them, maintaining them, making sure they're safe for us to drive. So they do a great job. But unfortunately, with the budget we've been dealing with for the last several years, we haven't been really keeping up as much as we should on vehicle replacement. So Mr. Duffy's worked with the shop, and I think we've got about a 10-year plan now on rolling the cars over. And one of the other things I think they mentioned last night is some of the cars may go to other departments first, let them use those cars for a year or two because they don't put a lot of miles on them, and then they'll roll into the PD later, and then we can use them. Some of the other things we haven't been replacing are like tasers and firearms. A lot of our tasers are 10 to 12 years old now. They really have a lifespan of about 5 years because they're made of plastic. So we have some put in this year's budget and some firearms, and then we plan to just each year do 2 to 3 or 4 a year so that we get on a replacement cycle that we should be, and we're not having to put a whole bunch in one budget year. We plan to hold our first National Night Out program this year. We've never had one here in Chino Valley. It's usually down in Prescott, but we're working on a program for Memory Park, and we're going to have activities over there for the kids and families and things, and it's just a night to come out and turn your porch lights on and say, hey, we're going to fight crime. So we're going to do the first one we've had in Chino. The other big thing we're dealing with in the department is recruitment. We're down 4 positions right now. It's been really difficult. I'm fishing in the same pond with Prescott Valley, the county, and all the other agencies in Arizona for qualified people. So it's been really difficult. We're looking at probably putting 4 people in the academy in Prescott Valley in August. It'll be the first time we've had 4 people in an academy at once. In the meantime, I've got forced overtime right now just to cover shifts. And I just don't want to burn out the people I have. So we're working diligently to try to fill those positions. I just did want to say, too, that those vacancies aren't created by people leaving for other jobs in law enforcement. We've only actually had one. I've had several retirements. I've had one that had an injury and decided to go back to college. Another one, for some reason, decided he wanted to be a fireman. But, they're not leaving. The only one's leaving for another job, and it's actually out of state. So I haven't lost anybody recently to the other local agencies. It's just been kind of a bad timing that a lot of things happened and left us kind of short. So had another one that washed out of the field training program. So, but we are working diligently to try to fill those. I'm working with HR on some different approaches to recruitment, maybe reaching out of state. I have one gentleman that came down and talked to us from Wisconsin where there's like 2 or 3 feet of snow on the ground, and he really enjoys our weather, and so we're hoping he decides he wants to move to Chino Valley. Let's see. As far as the actual budget numbers, some of the things that you'll see in the increases, I'm sorry, I don't have page numbers. Mine, when it printed, didn't have page numbers. I don't know. 84, Mr. Duffy? Okay. You'll see professional services go up. Part of that is the Lexipol, which is our policy manual program I just talked to you about. We're actually spreading the cost of that out between professional services, training, because there's a training component to the program, and we put some in the animal control budget because it also covers her department. So we did spread that cost out into 3 line items. The other big jump is that line item covers our polygraphs and our things that we do with our new hires, so that we put all that into professional services. And that's going to be higher, obviously, because we got a lot of vacancies right now. That's the same reason medical's up, because of our physicals. They're about $250 a piece, and they're required by Arizona Post. We do save those till last in the hiring process, so we know that the person's passed everything else before we spend that money. The increase in the canine program is because we have 2 dogs. Hopefully, if it goes kind of like last year, we're going to be able to fund that primarily out of grants and donations, so we hopefully won't even touch that money, but it's there just in the event we don't get a grant, and we do have to pay for some things ourselves. The small tools and equipment is up primarily because of tasers. They're about $1,100 a piece. We're going to try to replace 5, which is about 1/3 of what we have this year, and also a few of the firearms. We're very fortunate we were able to do some trading with a couple of our local gun stores and take care of a lot of our needs with the firearms with no cash. But we still need to replace a few more to get on a good replacement schedule. With that, any questions you have on the PD budget, and then we can move on to animal control.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
where's the part about putting them in the academy? Where's the cost for that?
We actually don't pay anything for the academy itself. We're a user group, so there's no actual cost for the academy, but we're paying their salary while they're in the academy.
Okay.
But we do, prior to the academy, we have to do a psychological, a polygraph, and a physical, which all cost, and those are in the professional services and medical part. And then once they're on payroll, we're just paying their salary while they're there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this side? I noticed went from $0 to $8,000 worth of ammunition.
Well,
we
actually, it's because
got
we
you a
broke that out. It
shooting
used to
range.
be in another line item, and Mr. Duffy broke that out this year. And the reason we did that is because it's such a high cost for us. We wanted you to see what we're spending on it. It
Okay.
used to be buried in the training budget.
Oh, okay.
So we just moved it around a little bit this year to make it a line item by itself. And that's why you'll see there was no cost for it in the prior years.
Okay, makes it more transparent. Thank you.
Yes, sir, and it is a big expense for
Yeah.
us. And as a shooter, you know what ammunition
It
prices
is,
have done over
yes.
the last 4 or 5 years.
You bet. Yes, ma'am.
I would just have a question. I know that all of our volunteers are covered under our workers' comp program, and I'm just wondering, I assume that our Citizens on Patrol is covered likewise under the same program as other officers, or not?
They're covered by
Are there risks involved?
By
or-
the town's worker comp. We had a big discussion about that recently. One of the newer volunteers had concerns about it, and we did meet with HR, and they talked with the town attorneys and everything, and they would be covered, since they're driving our cars and things, they are covered by workers' comp if they get in an accident or something while they're driving, or if they're directing traffic and were to get injured, they would be covered by workers' comp.
Okay, good, good. Did you have a follow-up, ma'am?
No, I was aware of that. That's something I'd looked into some time ago for all of our volunteers, where errors and omissions and things like that for various committees are covered. But I just wondered, because that would be one of our biggest cost areas is for officers, and I wanted to make sure, because the risks are higher.
Right, and that's exactly what came up from one of our volunteers. They felt like the risk was a little higher than, say, volunteering in the library, and they just wanted to be sure they were covered should they get in an accident or be hurt. And
You
we
bet.
did run through that whole process with HR and the attorneys, and they are.
Okay, excellent. If there's no more questions regarding the police department, then on to animal control.
Animal control. Probably the couple of biggest things with animal control this year are, currently we have an animal control supervisor and 2 adoption specialists. And animal control or animal-related calls are actually our biggest category of calls. If you see her statistics, she had almost 1,000 animal-related calls in the 12-13 fiscal year. We used to have 3 animal control officers. We went down to 2 animal control officers and then down to the 1 animal control officer. And our 2 adoption specialists primarily only work in the shelter. So I've worked with Mr. Duffy on adding, instead of 2 full-time positions, it would become 2.5. We would have an animal control supervisor, an animal control officer, and 1 adoption specialist. Part of the other reason for looking at doing this is my animal control supervisor is pregnant, and we're okay with HIPAA because she's announced that to everyone, and she'll be going out on maternity leave soon. So what we've actually started doing is training one of the adoption specialists in some of her responsibilities, and then if the budget is adopted in July, we would advertise for a full-time person, which she's interested in, and we'll see if there's anybody else interested in the town and go through that process. But that would give me at least 1 animal control officer while she's out, and when we actually need 2, but at least we'd have 1 instead of 0. And then when she returned, we'd have 2, which is really where we need to be based on the number of calls we deal with. The shelter, we have, as you can see, a lot of volunteers over there. They're great for walking dogs, showing dogs, and all of that. But when it comes to the enforcement side of it, they really need the proper training. Believe it or not, these animal control officers go to a lot of training on how to use their equipment, their catch poles, the taser, the pepper spray, euthanization, which we don't do, but they have to be trained on it in the event they need to do it, dealing with aggressive dogs and things like that. So I can't send my volunteers out to deal with those type of things. They really need to stay at the shelter or in a controlled environment. So that's probably the biggest thing personnel-wise. In her budget, one of the things she asked for, and it's plugged in here, Mr. Duffy may have to explain how he's going to move the money around, but her heating and air conditioning system is ancient, and it's starting to give us a lot of problems. And you can imagine in a shelter environment, the hair, the dander, and all the things that are getting into that system. And it's a block building. It's not very well insulated. And we're not just talking about comfort of animals. I have all the volunteers as well as my staff work in that building. But it's been breaking down and giving us problems on a fairly regular basis. So we do have some money under its maintenance town facilities, and I don't know how Mr. Duffy's going to deal with that. I don't know if it'll come out of maintenance and facilities or mine or however they wish to do it, but we definitely have to look at replacing that this year. The other thing is, we're trying to be more accurate and transparent how we spend the money. And so we've moved things like, the animal control officer has one of the mobile data computers in her truck that's exclusively for her use. And there's a yearly cost to that, and before it's been in the PD budget. So under maintenance, machinery, and equipment, you'll see that went up because we've moved that over into her budget to be more accurate on where the cost is. And also, we have some of the e-citation devices that the court bought us a few years ago that the officers use. She actually writes probably as many warnings and citations as an officer, so we'd like to buy her one for herself because we only have enough for the officers, and most times she's still having to handwrite all those warnings and citations. And so those cost about $5,000, and there's about $1,000 to get the software installed on it. And it's a piece of hardware equipment, so, you know, the ongoing cost is minimal once you buy it.
Right.
But to be accurate in where the money's going, we wanted to put it into her budget since it would be exclusively for the animal control use. And some of the things like the training will go up because of the second animal control officer. Like I mentioned, there's some classes and things we'll need to send that person to get certified, and travel for training and that type of thing. And then we did, under professional services, the $450 there is the part of the policy manual that we're allocating to animal control because it does cover that department as well as the PD department.
Okay.
So that, if there's any question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
$1,000 for feline spay and neuter?
I'm sorry,
Are we-
that was something she came and asked me for. We have a huge feral cat problem in town, and there's a couple of the rescue organizations that are doing some, they call it a trap and release, because they're feral, they can't be adopted, but they spay or neuter the cat, and then they release it back.
Right.
And so the volunteer groups have, you know, done what they can do, but she'd like to ramp that up a little bit, because actually we get a ton of calls and complaints, you know, the neighbor, the cat hoarder or whatever, then the other neighbor's mad because they're going in their yard and doing things, and the population just keeps growing and growing. So the $1,000, we get a really good deal from the vet's office on those, so and we have the traps, so what we would do is trap them, they would spay or neuter, and we release them.
Okay.
Well, and that's the kind of thing normally some volunteers would take collections for, but if we're paying for it, I guess it's...
Well, and they are doing a lot. I mean, the
Right.
volunteer organizations do a lot for us in that, but it's
And
just,
the coyotes would seem
the
to-
coyotes are helping a little bit.
Well,
Thank you.
I worry
It's
about
true.
that
It's
myself.
true.
But that's it's a huge problem in Chino. Unfortunately, you know, once you have 2, they make 10, and 10 make, you know, the numbers just drastically increase. So everyone that we spay and neuter does help reduce that feral population, so.
Yeah. Picked a feral cat up in my headlights the other night. They're all over.
If you drive around at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, there's a lot in town.
That's what my dogs are barking at.
Yeah, that's a lot of it at night. And it does create
In
other
addition to
problems.
the
It creates
coyotes.
dog barking issues and other issues, but that's something specifically Angela asked me to put in her budget this year because it
where
is
they
a,
are, the coyotes come too.
All right. Any other questions on animal control? No. Excellent. Thank you.
thank you.
And now special revenue police, is that?
We did that already.
Oh,
We're done.
No, Joe's got to go through some stuff.
Jamie's going to talk about her budget real quick, and then I'll finish up.
cool.
Good evening.
66.
Okay, let's see. What's going on with us? Accomplishments for last year. We've spent a lot of time in the last year and a half or so training Liz. Training never stops, but she has been sufficiently trained that I have requested that her title be changed to Deputy Town Clerk. So that's a good thing. The other accomplishment is to implement HB 2826 consolidated elections. That's actually going to be hitting you on your agenda next Tuesday. And I believe that all of those things will address, as far as our regulations are concerned, we'll address everything we need to implement that. We worked with the codifier on a couple of town code updates, about 6-7 years worth of ordinances that we codified. And then when we selected a new legal services, there was a lot of changes that needed to be made. We had to change processes, procedures, forms. There was just a lot involved with that. So We still have 78 boxes of records to go through that we inherited from them that we inherited from Musgrove, Drutes, and CAC. So Liz and I are going through 1 or 2 a month, reviewing them, determining whether or not they can be destroyed or if we have to retain them. So that's what's pretty much filling up my storeroom right now. For the next fiscal year, of course, we want to hold a successful election. However the voters vote, we just want to make sure we are in compliance. And of course, this election is going to be our test case for all the implementation of the new law. So the county, all of us are working together to try to make that as smooth as possible. And I'll have more to say about that next Tuesday. We wanted to do some more not upgrades, but just some more using Agenda Quick. Putting in more agendas and templates and things so that Liz and I can start migrating all of our public body agendas and minutes into it. And she's already started. She's got 5 or 6 new ones in there. The next initiative and goal is something that kind of got sprung on the entire state in January. The legislature passed a couple of laws with regard to records. And over the last year, the State Department of Library, Archives, and Public Records has been training all of us on how to prepare an essential records listing, which then can be used for continuing operations plan, emergency disaster plan, whatever. But basically, they want to have this project done by the end of the year. This is a huge project. It involves every department, at least 2 or 3 people in every department. So Liz and I are right now just trying to get a timeline down, kind of doing what you've been doing with your strategic plan, try to figure out how we're going to pull all this together. And then, of course, one of our goals is to get rid of all those attorney records, or at least know how long we have to keep them. As far as my budget is concerned, as far as personnel, we have a temp that just started working a couple weeks ago to help us with that backlog of minutes. But then when I reported to Robert about this Essential Records project coming in the middle of all these other things that you all and we all are dealing with, he suggested that I put some money in to possibly hire an intern or a temp who can help us organize it, or at least help with some of the data entry, because every department is going to be having things that have to be entered into these forms, and then they have to be prioritized and determine what level of emergency these records are going to be accessed. And so if somebody is just doing the data entry and that's not falling on staff, that would definitely be helpful. So, and then in my professional services line, you'll see that was quite a bit bigger. Part of that is because we are now holding, my department is going to be holding the expenses for document recording for the entire town. We decided rather than every department having a little bit of money for their document recording, we would just stick it all in here. And we have an arrangement now with the county that we just throw a bunch of money in a fund, and we don't have to cut a check every time we have something to record. It's working out really nicely, but we ended up putting it in my budget. And then, of course, I included some money in there for that Essential Records project. And then Liz and I would really like to put a T-bar ceiling in our new, we're calling the storeroom the vault now. But we'd like to, it's still getting too hot and too cold. We're having too much temperature fluctuation, so we'd like to try to get that under control a little better. My advertising and printing and binding line item is way over budget this year. It's always a crapshoot as far as that line is concerned. I have seen it go anywhere from $7,000 to $21,000, and you never know from year to year because it all depends on how many ordinances you pass. So we pretty much doubled that to make sure we had enough to cover, because I know that Mr. Gritman would love to rewrite the part of the town code about sewer, and that's probably the biggest section in the town code. So if he decides to do that, we're going to have some pretty good expenses associated with that. My records management line item went way down because last year we spent quite a bit of money purchasing some fireproof cabinets for our permanent records. So that's back to normal. And then our training and seminars budget went up quite a bit because as part of our performance evaluation, the town manager was interested in Liz and I taking some either project management or training. And so we kind of looked around if we were thinking maybe of taking a college class or something, but we just figured if we took a college class, that's how much it would cost.
Okay.
And elections. This is the fun one. The actual budgeted amount for elections is the same as this year. This year I budgeted for 2 elections. This amount of $43,000 is for only 1 election. And that I am really hoping will come down. But when I went to have to budget for an election in the fall, I had to ask the county, where are your numbers going to be? Because I know everything's going to change. And they basically said, to be on the safe side, take the highest number. Our last election, because it was vote by mail, we only paid about $2 a voter. But when you have a polling place election, that cost goes up to $4.60 per voter. So it more than doubles. So the county supervisors are going to be working on that fee schedule in May. We are going to be bringing a new contract with the county back in June, and by then we should know what that number is. So I don't know if it'll be too late to actually get it in the budget, but like I said, I'm really hoping that, and they're hoping, everybody's hoping that number will go down.
You bet.
But
You bet.
a lot of it just depends on how they scope out everything. However, elections are going to just be more expensive.
Yeah.
We'll have to get used to that.
Miss Lewis, just
Yes.
briefly, it's going to be mandatory polling places. We won't be able to mail in anymore.
For now, right now, counties cannot have vote-by-mail elections. Only municipalities can.
Okay.
Yavapai County is actually leading the charge to get that changed, but they were kind of shot down by the County Supervisors Association last year. And all they want to do is just put language in the statute saying that counties may elect to
Yeah.
have vote-by-mail, not require them, but just elect them. And because we have always been able to have vote by mail because our general elections aren't at the same time as theirs. But now that we're being forced to be on the same ballot, everything has to be polling place.
Okay, okay.
So-
Thank you, thank you. Ma'am? Yes.
In the case of somebody being shut in or infirmed, they would have to come down and vote, or would they still be?
No, then anybody can still get an early ballot.
Oh, okay.
In fact, in Yavapai County, 75% of the voters are on the early voting list, and about 66% of them actually vote early. The other 12% or whatever, they come into the polls anyways. But,
Thank you.
yeah. And then
Did you-
Councilmember Hatch.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. The second one is that I'll be announcing at the council meeting that I've been approached again by NACOG that they're coming up on their student summer employment. And they wanted me to make sure the town was aware if they were interested in any students they pay the wages in the town.
Yes, we did this last year. Cecilia got a notification of it. I got notification, so I contacted her to make sure, and she says that we were most likely going to
So
apply.
I
Excellent.
will probably let them know again, and I'll send an email out, I guess, but I'll announce it. Terry Jewett approached me on last week at our meeting,
You bet.
because she knew that we had a couple last year and thought that we might be interested again.
Yeah, there was somewhere that I was looking in the budget that we were looking at getting a couple of interns to help in IT.
Yeah, those are university
Several
interns. I
areas.
think he has some specific people in mind. In the college where I teach, looks for interns too, placement, but I think those are budgeted interns that he had specifically in mind. They're technical
Okay.
kind of background.
Cool.
Very good.
Excellent. We need them.
Yes, we do. The only other thing in my budget, just small tools and equipment, I just have some furniture that's falling apart. Try to open the cabinet door and it like falls off. So I'll probably be purchasing some new,
All
a
right.
couple of, one new filing cabinet.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And that's all for me.
All right.
Did you, should I say something about the mayor and council budget? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Duffy can say things about the mayor as well as anyone. Yeah.
I'll take a pleasure in that. So I started the budget hearings yesterday. I'll end the budget hearings this evening, so, but it will not be as long, I don't think. I'd like to talk to you just about a few of the miscellaneous departments left. One is non-departmental on page 73. And this is where we keep track of the items that are sort of general for the entire city. Our liability insurance, our legal fees, and things along those lines we try to put in non-departmental. This year, we're reducing our legal fees. Well, we're keeping the budget the same, but our legal fees are going to be over budget by about $25,000, and that's just finishing up all the litigation that we have. Next year, we kept the budget at 150 because we have no active litigation going on, so we're hoping that the legal fees will go down. So that's maybe a little optimistic, but I believe that's probably a pretty good estimate. Liability insurance went up just slightly from 175 to 185. Our outside agency funding, of course, that's the money that we give to the Chamber of Commerce every year. We left that the same. One of the things, a couple of new things that we've added to the budget, and sort of in the lines that we put our Cassell software upgrade in also last year, we're going to do the development services software. And they really don't know what they're going to do with that, so this is more of just a plug figure. The idea, the last conversation that we've had is that we're going to co-op with Prescott and Prescott Valley and do a combined purchase and everybody be on the same system. You know, we'll have our accounts on ours, our GIS and our, you know, what our building department does. But so we're looking at upgrading together, hopefully to save a significant amount of money.
Good idea.
And just, you know, linking with the county's GIS and getting all that in one area all set, I think has a lot of, it sounds like it has a really, is very advantageous, or could be very advantageous for us. So it's just a plug figure now, and we'll see how that goes. There's a likelihood if they do that big thing, it's going to be probably another fiscal year ahead. We added $15,000 into the website design and implementation. One of the services that they're leaning more and more towards is a company who basically provides a service to several thousand municipalities throughout the country, and they have nice templates, they work, they're very standardized. City of Flagstaff, if you look at their website, it's the same company that does them. They have like a 4-year payment plan where they spread the costs out over 4 years and then it drops off. So we're going to be bringing that to council and looking at that. They've actually been doing demos this spring, and I haven't been part of those, but I know that it's been going on, and they've been looking at all different ways to enhance our website, because it's getting a little clunky at this time compared to other sites. So we want to, you know, have a good impression on the web. Contingencies I increased significantly just because expenses have gone up from last year to this year. So this is the 5% that we're required to have. And so, but shaking all that out, one of the other things that I would like to point out specifically is, if you notice, the CVI market TPT reimbursement was paid off this last year, and the Walgreens reimbursement was paid off this last year. So we're saving about $50,000 in those sales tax incentives or those rebate programs that we were doing. Now, the days in is going to go on for quite a while, and I just put in a number approximately what they've been doing every year. So, but we are having some savings there. Some of those.
I'm confused. I thought we paid for the upgrade on the days in. Now, we paid for the sizing upgrade, and normally that reimbursement, that was the one and only that we paid for. Normally that reimbursement is for them upsizing it.
Well, there was just like Walgreens and basically Safeway.
No, I was told it was totally different, that we paid for that upsizing. You need it, we better check on it.
Well, no,
because-
I've read the days in agreement, and there is a reimbursement agreement for 1% of their tax back to them,
Well,
up
that'd be
to a
real
certain
interesting,
amount.
since we paid for the upgrade, I wonder why we're paying for it
Yeah,
then.
no, I've read the signed documents and agreements of that.
Okay.
When I
Well,
reviewed all
okay.
these,
I'd like to, if you could send me a copy, I'd
okay,
appreciate it.
yeah, it's the One South Partners.
We may have paid
Can
for
you do
it.
that, Jamie? Okay, so Jamie will get that to you, Councilman Hatch.
People, so-
So, the fact of the matter is, with that agreement, it'll expire before we get all paid.
Okay.
It's not going down as quickly, because they were planning on having more businesses in that area contributing to it, and it did not happen. So, but I did want to point that fact out, that there's about a $50,000 savings that we're no longer paying in future fiscal years. All in all, non-departmental is about flat from last year. The finance department, I'm glad Robert's not here, because I'm going to be over budget this year. And really, the biggest problem, the reason that I will be over budget in, total expenses, well, actually, my projection's not, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be, I didn't budget enough we have to submit for the GFOA CAFR and the budget award, so, and we had additional audit fees because of that, and I didn't plan on that in the budget, so I think we're gonna be up, it will be a few $1,000s over budget on it. Besides that, everything else is pretty static in the finance department. We're just doing the same thing. Mayor and council on page 81. You're leading the way by just barely going up, and you were actually going to go down, but Robert went ahead and put a little extra money in just in case you hire anybody to do your retreats or your strategic plans or something like that. So that's why the training and seminars went from 2,600 to 8,000. We just did that a couple days ago. But overall, you did wonderful. You budgeted 29,000 and only spent 21,000. So you led the charge, and we appreciate the effort, Mayor and Council. Yeah. So we kept the budget pretty much the same all the way through, except for that additional training and seminars. We thought we would just add that as just if we need it, we have it.
Okay.
So any questions on all those, and then I'll go into the other items.
Did you, yes, sir.
I guess I have a question on these TPT reimbursement. What is that all about? I'm not aware of.
Okay, well, they signed one with Safeway, Days Inn, which is One South Partners, and Walgreens. And Mary, you can help me out if I get this wrong, but they extended infrastructure, and I guess water lines, sewer lines, to them, and the town agreed to reimburse them a portion of that money back. Is that about right?
Ms. Hatch disagrees, but that was my understanding of
They
it.
pay for the
was that
exercise. Yeah.
was that if your facility requires, say, a 6-inch line, and we know there's going to be future expansion, and we put in a 10-inch line or whatever, if I remember rightly, they have the facility pays for that 10-inch line, then we pay them back. We reimburse some of their TPT
Yeah.
for the difference
For the additional
between
cost of
that
what
and
they're
their
requiring.
original. That's the way I had understood
That's
it.
correct.
So,
Yeah, and each one of them, they were collecting 3% sales tax. We were rebating 1% sales tax every quarter, or one of them semi-annually.
That was like our incentive to get them to come into town.
Right.
And
Well,
what does TPT stand for?
Sales tax.
Huh?
Sales tax.
yeah,
Transaction
transaction
privilege
privilege
tax.
tax.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really, it helps our town out because if we do have future development, we've already got the line in there. And we didn't have to front the money for it. We're simply rebating back, so.
Right, right.
Yes,
And
so-
Walgreens paid off significantly earlier than they were planning.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about Safeway, but I think they even paid off a little bit earlier
Okay.
too, so.
Excellent.
And Days Inn will never recover their full amount. I mean, their agreement will expire before
Yeah,
they recover
yeah.
it. So they're just,
All right.
and like I said, I think that's because they plan on having several other businesses on that property contributing, so.
Well, the good news, though, is that this gives us a little bit more money to work with. So
Yes, sir. It
Excellent.
definitely does.
Life is
Definitely
good.
does. And saves me a little work calculating those things every quarter too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
A question on the bank charges.
Yes, ma'am.
Why do we have bank charges?
in finance?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I left them high this year because I haven't had enough history of express bill pay on what we're actually going to be saving. But the last couple months, it looks like we're going to be saving $200-300 a month. What happened when we went with express bill pay is they were able to take our utility accounts and all our utility credit card charges and put them under a utility rate. And so the cost per swipe, or the merchant cost of each of those cards is significantly less than just charging something at the pool or
Okay.
the development services. So we broke it in half. I just don't have enough data to calculate how much those are going to be. Plus, we do pay about $400 a month to bank. Now, most of the time is basically we're on an analysis account. So we get charged for every deposit, we get charged for every check that goes through, all the currency. There's a certain charge, like 1 cent, half a cent, whatever. And historically, your money that you left in your bank account would generate enough interest income to offset the cost of the bank fees. So it'd be zero. But when the Fed dropped their rate to zero, we don't earn anything on our bank accounts. And so we are paying our bank, $400 or $500 a month in just service charges.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So the banks are doing well. They're either getting it from us or they're going to get it through interest earnings. They get it either way.
For sure. And you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, when it says merchant bank card fees, that's not us sitting on a balance on a credit card. That's
No.
them charges for people who use cards that we pay.
That's correct. For all the non-utilities, and utilities, they have it budgeted separately. And this includes the express bill pay fees.
Okay.
I fully anticipate this to be lower.
Okay.
But I just don't know to have enough data to confidently tell you it's going to be lower. But this time next year, we'll have it nailed down. It's
Okay.
still going to be $5,000-6,000.
You bet. Yeah, once you have a history, you can work
Yeah,
with.
yeah. I just don't have enough to.
Yes, sir.
Just a matter of interest, how are we doing with this online payment deal? Is a lot of people signing in for that?
We are, and we're getting a few more. I haven't checked since I started the budget in the last month, but we've got a few. We got a huge chunk of the people who pay their bills through like their bank automatically. So those automatically get downloaded. So we no longer receive 300-400 checks a month. And I think we're over 250, 260 the last time I checked in users on Express Bill Pay. So, and we're pushing it and going. We only had about 110, give or take, paperless billing. And that's where the town will really save money, with the people that go paperless. But we're using the Express Bill Pay. We ended up using it more throughout the departments for our cash receipting because it's so user-friendly and it's so simple to use. And it doesn't cost us anything to use it in other areas. We only get charged for the credit cards, but we can receipt in checks and in cash too, and that's free. So it's the uptime on training users how to put the money in through Express Bill Pay versus Cassell. It's 25% of the work it takes to do Cassell. So it's very user-friendly and very intuitive. And a novice user, we're going to put it at the pool this year, and even the folks who are seasonal, they're going to come in, and I think it's going to work out really well for them.
Okay, but we only have like 200 people paying back through that bill pay?
About 260, 270?
Wow,
Yeah.
out of,
Well, 270, and then we have another 300. So we're pushing 600 people, 600 accounts.
what's the 300?
Out of 1,800 accounts.
200 plus the 300, where's the 300?
The 300 are people who are paying through their bank, and their transactions are getting automatically picked up through the Express Bill Pay contracted with there's like 3 or 4 firms that do all the electronic transactions, or the majority of them in the country. And Express Bill Pay automatically links with those. So instead of that bank or that firm generating a check and putting it in the mail, it's transferred electronically.
So we're like at 30% roughly?
Yeah, yeah. And it's going to continue to grow as time goes on. But
When you cut out the envelopes, that'll really push it.
yes. We've talked about that.
No envelopes, they'll have to
They'll have to do
do
it.
something.
You are right.
Okay, did anybody have any other questions for Joe on the non-departmental finance, mayor and council? Is that it then?
No, I want to talk to you I want to hit some of the other little things that are in here, just so you guys are aware. Page 145, just really quick, that's the CDBG grant. I know you're all aware of that. And Ron has that, basically $264,000 and change is what we're doing there. We did do, and Ruth actually drove this after the grants on page 146. On 147, there's a real nice, she really expanded her narrative on the grants. that we're going to receive. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention if, as you guys are reading this, and I know we all diligently will, that's available. And she's done a really good job of breaking
Is
that
that
out.
EDA grant in there? Because I thought they upped it to $1 million, or they asked them to
Yeah,
up
it's
it to $1 million.
it's the second one down, EDAP. is
P,
what- Yeah. Yeah, she has up to 1 million. So, and we expanded the grant fund just because we know we're applying for all these grants. We don't know whether we receive them, but we just need that capacity in the budget. On page 152 is our capital asset replacement fund. And pretty much we're down, we have about $130,000 left in this. And what it had been funded with prior to this was the annual insurance refund and any sales tax audit income that we receive. And this will probably be the first year that Don Zelikowski has actually started doing some audits, because they were doing a lot of audits through the construction as the boom was going up, and auditing a lot of contractors. Well, when the economy died, he stopped and basically held off. So, but he is actually auditing couple contractors this year, so we may see some additional funds coming in here. And this is just what the town has set this up for is for like one-time revenues, special revenues, rebates, workers' comp refund or something like that. And then we can just put it in this little bucket of money, and then the council can decide what they want to use it for. But it's really has been used for like just capital asset replacement and things. So we're really not spending anything except the $10,000 contract for Don Zelikowski for the sales tax audit work out of here. And to be honest, he never bills us that full $10,000. So, in fact, last fiscal year was only $850. But he is doing some work. I've got him moving, doing some work this year, so we'll spend $7,000.
And just for our audience benefit at home, I believe when Mr. Zelikowski does those sales tax audits, things pick up in the town because other folks pay attention.
Right. Well, the focus is compliance and education. And we're hoping through education that people will pay their sales tax correctly. But the fact of the matter is, occasionally,
Yeah.
And we get tips, and we hear things in the community that we look at, and we review the payment journals, and we can pretty much tell if a business is not paying what they should.
Right.
At least we can tell there's something wrong here. Let's go take a look at it, and we go from there.
Okay.
So. The impact fees, as you know, in August, we will cease collecting these. Robert said he's going to actually have Pat Walker start her impact fee. We've started, but really get moving on the impact fee study in May or June. But we're going to have a time where we won't be collecting impact fees next fiscal year. So what I've done with the budget is just said we're not going to collect any. And if we do the study, reinstitute them, and bring them back in whatever shape or format, then we can start budgeting for them. But they will not be like they are now. We know the laws have changed, and the restrictions on how we use them and what we can collect for has significantly changed. So that whole issue will be coming to council for your discussion and decision,
You bet.
in the near future. But I know Pat's going to get going on the study here pretty quick.
You bet. And Prescott Valley has been having that conversation also with all the restrictions on impact
Right.
fees. It's going to be difficult. But
Because it has to be related to specific developments. And where before it was just put in the pool and we could use it wherever we thought the council thought it was best used. But those days are over. So what we can collect on impact fees, we've got a lot of work to do and a lot of conversations. On page 157, just to let you know that we do have a special revenue fund. We collect money for, it's a special lighting district. I believe it's at the Bright Star Lights. We collect about $4,000 a year, and we spend about $4,000 a year paying their light bills on it. I'm still going to do a little fine tuning on this, but we're within $100 or $200 of what it is. But just to know that we're a custodian of that process.
excuse me, will we ever be able to be shed of that SLID? No.
I don't think so. Yeah, because it's a special district.
Yeah.
They could have set it up a different way, but they didn't.
They didn't.
They dumped it on us.
Yeah, it's really not much work at all. Council, you guys probably do the most. You have to pay you have to adopt a separate resolution or an ordinance every year. And then, we just pay the bills and run them through, so it's not much work for us. And then on page 166, I just wanted to show you the debt schedules that we have. This is exactly the same as last year, just we're actually paying off about $700,000 in principal this year of our debt. Our original debt that we're working on was $22,715,000. As of June of 14, it was $20,340,000, and we're going to pay an additional $704,000. So we're under $20 million as of this point, next June 30. So
We will be under 20
we
million
will
in
be
our
under
debt service?
20 million. Yes,
That is a good thing.
but we still have a lot of payments to make, sir.
Yeah, 20 million still has a lot of zeros.
It's a
but-
lot of zeros, yes. Yeah, it is. So, this page just breaks out actually the payments, the January payments and the July payments. And the following page, 167, just has that's really the debt service fund, how we keep the government debts separately budgeted for. 168 has our bonded debt capacity. And if you look at, we basically have about $17,400,000 worth of bonded debt capacity that we could do a general obligation bond for. And our assessed value this year actually went down about 1%, but I'm pretty confident that that's it, that we should start seeing assessed values start moving back up. And then, of course, from 169 on is the detail of all of our debt issues, when we took them out, what the original amount was, and then just the principal and interest every year. And on the very last page, on 171, is our total payments each year, total principal and interest as it goes on. And so, just so you can see out in the future.
Can you refresh my memory? What are all these USDA?
Those were for Chino Meadows. That was part of the Chino Meadows. I think you did it through,
For the sewer?
uh-huh. Yeah, and the one thing about that debt is I believe it's 25-year debt with a real low interest rate. When I first got here, the first thing I did do was look at the debt with Mark Reeder, and you had just gone through a refinancing and reshuffled stuff. These really don't, it just doesn't pay to pay them off or do any refinancing or restructuring because they're stretched out so far.
Right,
So, and their interest rate is so low
yeah, yeah.
on it. So, but they go on and on. They go on, so. And that's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Let's see, we meet to adopt a tentative budget. Trying to see I think May 27th.
And you want to do a study session on the 15th? That's what I read in yesterday's minutes.
Yeah, on May 15th, we review the tentative budget. So we'll complete all the schedules that we have still outstanding, do some of the fine tuning that we have to do and fix the little lines and things like that. And so at the tentative budget, we still have time for input, and up until that time, we have time for input too. So, but then I think after that hearing, I'll make those changes, and that's what we'll present to the council as the tentative budget for adoption on the 15th. So you'll have time to digest this and read it and ask questions. Please feel free to come by and ask me anything you need to on this. So I'd be happy to talk to each of you individually, whatever it takes.
You said last night the budget study session on April 23rd was canceled, correct?
Yeah, I don't see any. So, but just between now and then, if you guys would like to stop by and just have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you about any part of this. So we still have a lot of work to do. It's a long process. So,
All right. Well, thank you. Were there any final questions, either side? Excellent. All right, thank you much. Joe?
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Who has not gotten the motion to adjourn tonight?
I'll move it.
Okay,
Second it.
okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Bye.
Meeting adjourned.
Joe?